Dzień dobry. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak. Thank you for Darius and your team for organizing a perfect conference and organizing beautiful weather to go along with it in this wonderful city. Everything is amazing. My name is Mitchell O Gorman. I'm the CEO of xWave Technologies. Our mission is to save lives by ensuring the patients get the best test first. And today I'm going to talk to you about reducing costs and improving patient outcomes using xWave CDS. And I think, a lot of the things that we'll be talking about will be supporting what Martin has been saying and what Yash and Dennis were saying as well around the potential impact of clinical decision support, particularly at the point of care. And I'll show you some of the data that we've seen from the deployment of xWave clinical decision support in Ireland. So the problem, it's been stated already, so just to reiterate the problem, there's lots of international research showing the level of unnecessary imaging. The Federal Drug Administration in the US estimates that somewhere between 20 and 50% of advanced imaging may be unnecessary for patients. Obviously, that can have an impact on patient outcomes, but also a significant impact on resource usage, and particularly when it's harder to find radiologists and to be able to kind of resource health systems. It's not just on the US. So I think, Dennis, you mentioned this study a little bit earlier from Luxembourg as well. And it was really significant because actually they looked at appropriateness rates for CT and MR, but they also broke it down by medical specialist, working within hospitals and also general practitioners. So you can see the data there. These are the appropriateness rates for CT and MR. And for the medical specialist, you can see 83% appropriateness rates for MR, and for CT, 70%. So obviously the flip of that is 30% were inappropriate or thought to be inappropriate. And general practitioner, the issue is even a bit more stark. So you can see there that they had a 64% appropriateness rate for MR ordering. That drops to 37% for CT ordering. So less than half were determined to be appropriate. And so what? What does that mean? Obviously, inappropriate referrals leads to increased wait times for resources that are becoming more scarce and difficult to access, increased healthcare costs that we've talked about. So millions, billions being spent on healthcare that is not necessarily required or appropriate for the patient. Delayed diagnosis for the patient by not getting the best test first. And then, obviously, unnecessary ionizing radiation for the patient. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Ireland. That's where we're from. And I'll talk about some of the research that was recently presented on the impact of clinical decision support in Ireland. So for context, the use of CT in Ireland has doubled since 2009. There are approximately 2.5 million diagnostic imaging tests carried out in Ireland every year. And demands on the clinical radiology services are increasing. And because of COVID as well, there's been a massive increase in wait times for radiology tests. In 2021, there were 226,000 people waiting for a scan. That's now over 250,000 people. So again, the problem is big, but it's getting worse. So, to talk a little bit about web-based guidelines, the European Council Basic Safety Standards Directive requires that member states within Europe have to ensure that referral guidelines for medical imaging are available to referrers, also taking into account radiation dosages. So in Ireland in 2015, we brought in web-based guidelines. And unfortunately, the impact of the web-based guidelines, because they were sitting on a separate system, a separate screen, a separate login, the impact was really quite limited. that was demonstrated by research that was carried out by Mater University Hospital in Ireland, and they looked at the impact of the web-based guidelines before implementation of the web-based guidelines and after implementation. And they ascertained that 42% of radiology referrals were inappropriate before the introduction of the guidelines, and it made no difference really. 43% they determined were inappropriate after the deployment of the web-based guidelines. And the problem wasn't the content, the problem was really in the design and how the guidelines were made available to the referring clinicians. This was also backed up by a recent research that was published in Insights into Imaging, which actually looked at the automated vetting of radiology referrals. But one of the findings was two human experts retrospectively looked at 375 adult brain CT referrals. And they found that 67.5% of the examinations were deemed to be justified, which meant that 20% were deemed to be unjustified and 12.5% as may be justified. So again, one of the conclusions from that research was the rate of unjustified examinations indicates that the clinical imaging guidelines haven't been adopted and implemented within clinical practice adequately. So the solution for this problem is clinical decision support systems. So, as Martin has said, it's the seamless implementation of evidence-based guidelines at the point of care with the patient. So we partner with both the Royal College of Radiologists to deploy the iRefer guidelines through our CDS solution, and also the European Society of Radiology to deploy their iGuide guidelines. So xWave Clinical Decision Support System. My colleague Marcin is going to give us a demonstration of the system when I finish speaking. But really, just to note, it is a cloud-based clinical decision support system that's available both through web but also through mobile apps, iOS and Android. And really what it's looking to do is improve patient outcomes by ensuring that they get the most appropriate test the first time around, reduced misdiagnosis and delayed diagnosis, to tackle and reduce radiology backlogs, but also, and this is really important, and almost as important as the first two, to improve clinician experience. So really you have to support the clinician in their work and try to actually speed up their work where possible. So xWave Clinical Decision Support is available through our own e-referral system, but also we integrate into existing digital referral systems or EHRs. To give you an example of improving clinician experience, we've just integrated into the largest GP practice management system in Ireland, and integrating our CDS solution into their pathways has actually reduced the clicks that the clinicians have to take by 33%. So really that's all about ensuring that the clinician's workflow is sped up, and if that's the case, then they will use it and they will adopt it. So to give an example of how clinical decision support works and improves patient outcomes, we'll take the hypothetical case of Mary. She's a female, aged 52. She's got new onset headaches and she's got a history of breast cancer. Our clinical director is Professor Ronan Killeen. He is the Chief Examiner for Radiology in Ireland, and he's also a consultant neuroradiologist. And this is actually a pathway that he sees a lot in his work as a neuroradiologist. So what could happen for Mary is initially she is given a CT brain. That's what the clinician has ordered, and nothing is found. The headaches persist. Then she's given a CT brain with contrast. Again, nothing found. Her headaches persist. She's given an MRI brain. Nothing found. The headaches persist. And eventually, she's given an MRI brain with a contrast, which is the best test for this patient, and ultimately leptomeningeal disease is identified within that scan. And unfortunately, what's happened in this instance is that Mary has to undergo 4 visits to the hospital or the imaging centre. What we're looking to do is reduce that to 1 visit. She's had 4 scans, reduce it to 1 scan. She's had unnecessary radiation exposure. And again, the deployment of clinical decision support would have shown that there's no radiation exposure required, and ultimately she's had a delayed diagnosis. And really, the deployment of clinical decision support is looking at providing a rapid diagnosis for the patient. So I'll talk to you about some of the data that we've seen from Ireland. So this is data that came from researchers from St. Vincent's University Hospital. They carried out research on a year of deployment of xWave clinical decision support, and it was looking specifically at referrals, CT and MRI referrals, that came from the Royal Victoria Eye and Ear Hospital, which is a specialist hospital. And those clinicians will order a narrow range of exams. So this isn't general practice where they're ordering a lot of modalities. They're looking specifically mostly at head and neck cancers. So just bear that in mind as we go through the data. So really the purpose of the research was to evaluate the referral pathway pre and post point of care clinical decision support tool implementation. So one of the big findings straight away was they saw that the implementation of clinical decision support reduced simultaneous referrals. So that's a referral for the same patient, for the same clinical indication, whereas previously they might have ordered 2 exams. It actually reduced simultaneous referrals by 73%. They also looked at the referral behaviour over months, and over a 3-month period, they ascertained that there was a 61% reduction in duplicate referrals. So duplicate referrals, again, is for the same patient, for the same clinical indication within a 3-month period. So these reductions in simultaneous and duplicate referrals drove an overall reduction in the volume of CT and MRI volumes from the expected volumes of 8.2%. So again, 8.2% mightn't sound like much, but when you put that in the context of the Irish radiology waiting list for CT and MRI, which sits at 5.3% of our national volume, you can see immediately the potential impact that clinical decision support can have on actually reducing those waiting lists. Specifically in the context of ionizing radiation and radiation exposure, this is also a key area that they looked at to see the impact of clinical decision support in that area. So this is a really interesting graph here. What we can see is before the deployment of clinical decision support, the clinicians were ordering more CTs. With the deployment of clinical decision support, that behaviour changed to the less radiating exam of an MRI. And actually, you can see in and around month 8 on the graph there, that behaviour changed back again towards MRI, towards CT from MRI. And the reason for that was in that month, Ireland suffered a cyber attack, which meant that all of our digital systems were down. And so the clinicians could no longer order digitally. They had to go back to using paper and fax. And it's really interesting to see the behavioural change when they no longer had access to clinical decision support, move back towards CT. And then when the systems came back up, we saw that behavioural change come back again to MRI. So again, it's really important to see that the deployment of CDS also shows the ionizing radiation dosage associated, and where clinicians can see that potentially 2 exams, a CT or an MRI, might be indicated for a patient that they are preferring to go with the lower ionizing radiation solution. And actually, the researchers on this study determined that there was a 27% reduction in ionizing radiation exposure brought about by the deployment of clinical decision support. It was the equivalent of 13 chest x-rays per patient in terms of that radiation exposure. They also looked at another area that typically you might not associate with the impact of clinical decision support, but they also wanted to look in the context of sustainability and environmental impact. They also looked at the reduction in the patient journey and also the reduction in CT and MRI, because they emit carbon, and a patient journey typically emits about 18 kilograms of carbon. So they also noted a reduction in carbon emissions brought about by the use of clinical decision support of 13.5%. Another point to note is because we connected both the clinical decision support at the point of referral, but also at the point of vetting, and we digitized and connected that whole system. Previously, an audit in 2015 showed that it was taking 7.5 working days to get a referral sent and then triaged in the receiving hospital. 7.5 working days on average per referral. Because we digitized that whole system, because we introduced clinical decision support, both for referring and for triaging and vetting, we reduced that average to just 15 minutes, which is a big reduction on 7.5 working days. It's 99.63%. So just to reiterate the benefits of clinical decision support for all of the major stakeholders. Obviously, the patient, first and foremost. Reduce costs and stress associated with unnecessary imaging. Reduce unnecessary trips to the hospital and imaging centre. Avoid unnecessary radiation exposure. Improve patient outcomes, so reduce the possibility of delayed diagnosis, misdiagnosis, improving chances of early detection and early treatment. In reducing costs associated with unnecessary and inappropriate imaging, increasing the availability of imaging supply for the patients that need it the most, and delivering better data to support better resourcing decisions, really important element of clinical decision support. Improving clinician experience for the referrers, so providing evidence-based data at the point of care with the patient to ensure that their patients get the best test first. Improving the consistency in the referring behaviour. So we've heard it this morning. It's a really important educational tool. Improving access to appropriate imaging for their patient. So in Ireland, most GP referrers are not given access to advanced imaging. CT and MRIs. So they have to refer their patient into the hospital so the hospital-based specialist can refer them on for a CT or an MRI. Because the GP, the general practitioner, is not trusted to order the right exam. So again, you can actually, if you deploy using clinical decision support, you can now give GPs and their patients direct access to the imaging that they need. And importantly, looking to reduce the clicks that they need to undertake within their systems. And then finally, the radiology team themselves. So ensuring accurate and concise information is included on the referrals. So reduce the cognitive load that they need to go through a lot of information, very clearly say what's being ordered and why is it being ordered. Reduce unnecessary imaging to help them focus on the patients that require imaging the most. And finally, support more efficient and consistent vetting and protocoling using clinical decision support. So that's me, and that's some of the impact that we've seen in Ireland through the deployment of clinical decision support. So we're very much looking forward to engaging with Darius and with the ecosystem within Poland to see if there are opportunities to deploy clinical decision support. Marcin, to finish off, you might do just a demonstration of our system and have a look at what it looks like. There you go.
Chciałem Wam dzisiaj pokazać szybką prezentację naszego xWave CDS Referring Platform. Tutaj na wstępie chciałem powiedzieć, że my naszą platformę, którą Państwo teraz zobaczą, traktujemy bardzo modułowo, a więc każdy element, który za chwilę będzie zaprezentowany, może być wyciągnięty i zintegrowany z dowolnym EPR-em, co też później zademonstruję w drugiej części prezentacji. A więc wracając do naszej aplikacji, pierwszą informację, którą tutaj widzimy, to są informacje o pacjencie, pani Aleksandra Kucep. Możemy dostać więcej informacji klikając tutaj. Widzimy także wcześniejsze skierowania. Doktor, osoba, która generalnie tworzy skierowanie, jest proszona o podanie historii choroby albo dzisiejszej wizyty, a więc na potrzebę tej prezentacji pani Aleksandra przyszła do nas z gorączką i kaszlem. Teraz można stworzyć referral na dwa sposoby. Albo poprzez wybranie procedury według wskazań, tudzież wybranie procedury. Wybranie procedury według wskazań polega na tym, że wybieramy najpierw wskazania, a potem nam są sugerowane testy, które można przepisać pacjentowi. I około 92% lekarzy wybiera drogę przez procedurę, więc my także wybierzemy tą drogę przez procedurę. Przechodzimy do następnego etapu i tutaj chcemy przepisać pacjentce CT thorax, czyli generalnie tomografię klatki piersiowej. Więc wybieramy tą procedurę. Tutaj warto zaznaczyć, że system jest inteligentny. On uczy się, z jakiego departamentu, z jakiej organizacji najczęściej są wybierane procedury, więc pomagamy tutaj lekarzom, żeby nie tracić czasu na kliknięcia i na wyszukiwanie procedur. Przechodzimy do następnego etapu, które są wskazania. A więc tutaj widzimy, że wskazania, które tutaj widzimy, przepraszam, wskazania tutaj indykowane są zapalenie klatki, infekcja klatki piersiowej, czyli acute chest infection. Wybieramy to wskazanie i przechodzimy do naszego CDS-u. I tutaj widzimy wszystkie informacje odnośnie testów, które są pokazane i wszystko na pomarańczowo. To są testy, które są sugerowane w specyficznych okolicznościach. Wszystko na zielono to są testy, które są wskazane. A więc dla tego przykładu zmieniamy naszą procedurę na prześwietlenie klatki piersiowej. Możemy również w łatwy sposób zobaczyć tutaj dowody, dlaczego tutaj jest ten wybór. Przechodzimy do następnego etapu, którym jest wybranie lokalizacji. Lokalizacja tutaj ma również możliwość poinformowania nas o średnim oczekiwanym czasie na daną modalność, więc wybieramy tutaj demo test i przechodzimy do kolejnego etapu, którym jest wysłanie skierowania. Możemy tutaj dodać więcej skierowań, jeżeli jest potrzeba, ale wysyłamy w tym momencie skierowanie prosto do szpitala. A więc w zależności od integracji możliwości jest kilka. Jeżeli najczęściej wysyłamy FireHL7 message tutaj do organizacji, ale jeżeli szpital nie ma takiej integracji, jesteśmy w stanie stworzyć PDF-a i wysłać maila pod podany adres e-mailowy. I tutaj jeszcze chciałem zaprezentować Państwu, że jak wspomniałem na początku, ta aplikacja jest bardzo modułowa, więc tutaj jest nasza integracja z Clinicis Eyes, który jest jednym z największych dostawców EPR-u w UK. Zaprezentuję Państwu krótkie wideo. Więc jak Państwo widzą, procedura, doktor od razu zaczął wybierać procedurę. W tym przypadku takie same procedury, jak ja zaprezentowałem Państwu. I nasz system automatycznie się włączył i pokazuje nam wskazania. Doktor w łatwy sposób może zmienić właśnie procedurę, którą chce wybrać. I poprzez jedno kliknięcie system jest automatycznie update'owany i widzimy, że więcej nie trzeba już tutaj nic robić. Robimy to bardzo limitując ilość klików, także jest to bardzo ważne dla lekarzy, aby nie tracić czasu na wyszukiwanie i klikanie. Tutaj chciałem bardzo podziękować Państwu. To tyle ode mnie.